I'm about 60 pages away from being finished, but I would just start off with I believe this is my favorite book that we've read in 5 years. I think, the way that he's broke this book down and the things that he's talked about in here is just, I've heard a lot of the stuff like, failure equals feedback, feedback knowledge, knowledge equals power, failure gives you power, like all of those things. Like, I mean, I just have so many notes. I don't know if I've even taken this many notes or in a book before. There's just so many that are, um, so good. Let me see and just read a couple to you. Um, Man, there's just so much. Um, I mean, just him talking about the tiny details. If you don't care about tiny details, you'll produce bad work because good work is a culmination of hundreds of tiny details. There was something that I read this morning too, and it just reminded me of talking about details because I feel like I am the detail guy, and sometimes I annoy people because I am so detail oriented. And he just kind of endorsed that today with me when I read it. Where I know Lola and Justin love that about me, but sometimes it's like when you're working hard on something. So I'm working with this gold company right now, and I talked to the CEO of the company, and there's just these things that I like to dial in. And I think the devil is always in the details from a marketing standpoint when people are coming in. And, Lola and I had a call with her on Monday, and I could tell she was very, very annoyed by these changes that we wanted to make. And, I got on the phone with the CEO of the company. He was like, well, I think it's just she's taking it personal, but she created this. And I think that's where a lot of companies fail is people are like, I was talking to a friend of mine today about a business that he has, and he's always afraid to upset the apple cart or get people upset, so he doesn't ever speak his mind. And he's afraid to bring legal counsel in to kind of be the buffer in between, and because he's cheap and he doesn't want to spend money. And I'm like, all the money now that you're going to lose because you didn't want to upset the apple cart, you're dealing with all this pain inside because you're afraid to push because you're afraid someone's going to push out or get upset. And so it just made me feel good about how my brain works and what's important, from being a CEO. Um, let's see. I mean, I just have so many notes. I should have starred these. But I think what I like most about this guy is the way that he speaks and articulates um, all of his ideas and points to a matter of um, how important it is to care about small things, but also sometimes let the small things go. And I just love the way he writes in this book. And so I've been listening to his podcast. Have you guys listened to his podcast? His podcast is awesome. Some of the people that he interviews on his podcast are absolutely amazing. So like that's been my gym listen now. And every time I go in the gym, I've been listening to his podcast. And a lot of times when people write a book, sometimes they don't speak the same as they write, and he actually speaks the same as he writes. I mean, this guy, this is his core competency and belief. And that's, he's super young. And a lot of people have trusted him to take their company, like big, big companies to come in. And then he was talking about social media. Um, you know, just I'm trying to think where that was at, but um, oh, the hook. Um, do you guys remember that part of the book when he was talking about the marketing and the hook, and even like going on stage or getting into a conversation, like to get people to engage, the first 5 seconds of any conversation is like where you have to grab people. So introducing yourself is not where you start, right? Because that's not going to hook many people, right? I mean, coming out with a power statement or doing a power statement on social media where people are like, okay, let me listen. And then he was just talking about like stories or YouTube or like 5 minutes, like you've lost people, right? Most people are gone in the first 30 seconds, and then people do 5 minute videos or 6 minute videos, and you have to kind of like throw hooks in there all the time and be very conscious of the hooks when it comes to marketing your company or marketing your product. And talking about that. So I mean, this to me is a book that I would read again, and go through and dissect it again because I just think there's so much valuable information in here. Again, one of the best books that I've ever read, and I can't say a good great enough. I've suggested it to so many people, so I love it.
Agreed.
All right. Well, I'll continue there on that one. It has been. It's a very good one. I know you haven't got to the very end, but spoiler, I did like his little trick at the very end. Law 33. Oh, what is that? It's signing up for a subscription base with him, right? Like it was some advice that I got years ago as a kid was whatever you do when you grow up, be your own boss and sell people something on a subscription service. Well, that's insurance for you. And but what's he do at the very end? Scan this QR code, bring it to the website, and to get the last law, put in your name and your email address. So he's like, he's already sold you because you bought his book. It's sitting right here. And now he's going to continue like, all right, perfect, smart, genius way to do that. So I did like, just how he finishes with that clever, tricky, getting information, building his email list, like very smart way to do this. This guy's not an idiot. But as this book was finishing up here in this last part of specifically talking about with the team and a little bit of carryover from last week, but into this last one here, I loved his little section on the who, not how. And you can see throughout this book, like how he has tied so many other readings and like how we read that entire book, who, not how. And that was, those three, the who, not how, the gap in the game, like I love that when we did that. I think it was 2 years ago. Like, and I forget that author's name, but those series of books, those were great ones. But I love how we distilled this one here and just how important it is when you're building your team and getting the right people in there. And we've seen this in other areas and just that great reminder of like you use Richard Branson as that example where Richard's dyslexic. Yet this guy, he's like, I'm not good at maths and reading. And yet, what does he do? He hires people that are better at it. And, we talked about that with Steve Jobs, and that's how he built Apple. And just that importance of surrounding yourself with people better than you in those areas and let them thrive and run with it. And then under that cult of mentality, and he was very careful about using that word and just like, don't take the bad parts of being a cult, but there's some of those behaviors that are good. But I love this part of it when he was talking about when you're building your organization, building it the right way. And so many people are looking for the little gimmicks. And this was on page 290. Just want to hear. Above all, don't fight the perk war. Anybody who would be powerfully swayed by free laundry pickup or pet daycare would be a bad addition to your team. Like if that's truly why they want to be on there. Just cover the basics and then promise what no others can, the opportunity to do irreplaceable work on a unique problem alongside great people. And if you can build like that last part there, the opportunity to do irreplaceable work on a unique problem alongside great people, if you can build your organization like that and just always have, as you had in the next parts there, building a great team and leveraging the bar and just if you can surround people with other great people and that there's meaningfulness behind all the work that they're actually doing, it's going to make a difference. And ironically, like it ties into I think what Jay was saying when he was just talking to this other lady and she was getting rubbed the wrong way because she was doing this work and it's like she's feeling personally attacked by it. When he talked about a lot of when people don't see like their work get to go to completion or all of a sudden just scrap what you've been doing. It's like, yeah, you have poured your time, effort, and energy into these projects. And now you're being told it was worthless and a waste of time. That's not going to build that good culture. That's not going to build longevity. It's not going to build retaining people on your team. And so again, it like echoing his sentiments there. This has been, I do believe, one of the best books that we've read that just encompasses both, what we always want to get better at, both our personal life and our business and professional lives. And this book gives great tips in all those areas. Easy read, good stuff. I really have enjoyed it and enjoyed the way it did finish there. And like I said, good job on him for getting all of our information on the back end of it to get Law 33 and get signed up for his deal. Smart.
I'll just follow that. Yeah, I think that was part of my favorite takeaways and favorite part of the book was this end section. And I know Lola, you kind of talked about like the cult mentality, but calling it the tribe mentality. I like reading it. I totally understand where he was going, but I still understand like why like switching it to the tribe, right? And just kind of that word association. But I also like the ask who, not how portion. I'm currently in a stage of my business right now where I am actually like building a team. It's happening a lot sooner than I thought. I kind of thought I was going to be in a solo sport here for a little while. But like I'm rebuilding a team, but I absolutely love some of these pieces where it's like, although I've built teams in the past, the team I'm building is different, right? Like, who do I want to surround myself with? I actually have that choice, right? Like, I don't have to just hire somebody for an hourly position just to hire somebody to fill. It's I'm choosing to do this, and therefore I'm looking for A players. And like I had put out a post for like the first position. It was literally something so small, 3 to 5 hours a week, some admin stuff. And the amount of people that responded that were actual like A players that I'm like, wait, you want to come and work with me for 3 to 5 hours a week? Holy cow, wow. And it just kind of got my brain going. Like, I really do have a choice on who I get to pick to not only, join the company, but these A players and the people that I'm like talking to are, I can already tell they're not going to be the ones that are okay with the B and C players, right? So it's almost like as I'm building this, you're building it with a cult mentality. There's a lot of things where I've even told them, I'm like, look, I don't have any perks. I don't have any like fun little benefits on why you should work with me. I really couldn't sell you on that except for what I'm creating and what we are, going to be doing here in the future as we go, right? And when we get to that part. And I think that's the exciting part. And so that's kind of where like the cult mentality, I was like, okay, oh my gosh, I'm building a cult. But it's just fun to see how it is a whole different side of building a business on this side of um, or in this chapter of my life compared to how it was before, and just kind of knowing these things. And this is how CEOs are looking at building their companies or how they've built their companies. And that's what I want to do. I want to build that cult mentality and then transition that into culture. And it's always been an important part of what I do, but now I can see it differently, and I appreciate the lessons and the little tidbits. I mean, they've been great to digest with the examples and just I feel like the super practical, like relatable concepts. I think that's what's so great about this book is that they are relatable. They are, that's not a word, implementable. You can implement them easily. And so, anyways, yeah, great book. Great book.
I'll jump next. I think two of the most powerful for this week from me were the ability to focus on marginal gains versus perfection. And I really delved into the power of feelings, where he had that Harvard Business Study review that said that people that if you're leading people and they can actually feel rather than the tangible, maybe from the metric based, even more so the metric based. And he went on to put a disclaimer in there that metrics and quality and that quantitative aspect is extremely important. But he said if your team realizes that and feels there's momentum, that continues to ignite, and it has its own water and magnesium type of situation where the fire will burn, the fire will start, the fire will get hotter. That was really, really important. But what I'm having to really push into my work is, and I just really, it didn't run counterintuitive, but you could feel the moisture of what he was saying seeping into my mindset. And that is to really, really look very hard, bring the microscope down, don't crack the slide in terms of perfection, but look at your marginal gains rather than the overall perfection. That perfection piece is just killer, because you'll always be chasing a standard. Yeah, I mean, there's a qualitative aspect as part of the perfection piece, but the quality of what it is that you're moving towards, your goals, your daily activities, you're building your interpersonal relationships as it relates to team. Those type of marginal increases. And, you know, he brought up Manchester United and, you know, I mean, that's fun. And looking and having built other companies, you know, you see that we get very focused on a lot of the perfection aspect and what it's supposed to look like, and we start bringing that into the present, and we forget about these marginal gains that are really, really important, that build team, that build your momentum, and you can actually, from a qualitative standpoint, you can measure those. And if they're measurable, even if they're marginal gains, that's gold. It's platinum to your business. So I'm reading it again. And I agree. I mean, it's taken the top off of what it is. I mean, I came into the book club a little bit later, but I mean, I've gone back and you know, to listen to that British accent in 1.5 to 2 times is really fun. You know, I mean, you actually start walking around the house speaking with a British accent. So yeah, it's a reread for me, and I'm going to have to reread it sooner than later, and that'll probably come up with the next iteration with the next book. So thank you. Good day to all.
It was so funny. It's like I had trouble reading books the first time, and then now the thought of going back and reading them again, I'm like, oh, I can actually read this book again, because I totally agree with what you and Jay said. Like this parts you just want to go back over, and I you know, find it super interesting as well. A lot of like what I relate to on this is from like corporate America. Previously, I was in corporate America for like 22 years or so, and so like my background comes from that. So it's hard for me to kind of forget about that, even though you try very hard to forget about corporate. So a lot of these things like I know we talked about it last week, and I know that I don't want to reiterate what everybody else said, but they ask who, not how. When I first went into leadership roles, and I worked for American Express for a long time, and I was always like so focused on having to know everything and having to do it really, really well. And it would stress me out, and to the point where I was making mistakes that you shouldn't be making, you know, in your first leadership role. And more or less they were the ones that got you into the first leadership role, right? So it's my boss said to me a long time ago, she's like, it's you think I know all the answers? And I was like, well, you seem to know all the answers. And she's like, I don't. I just surround myself with all of you guys who know the answers to all these questions that I have. And that's so you surround yourself with the people that do know all the answers to these questions, instead of, and the Richard Branson example was really actually pretty powerful. Dyslexic guy, doesn't know how to do math, basically essentially like having other people run the business. So it was a great way to kind of connect the two for me. And the same way it goes in for us in Lifeway, right? So as we're running this business, you know, we try to have this well-oiled machine, and it's not always going to go as planned, right? So you don't have to know all the answers to every single question, but you have to be able to have the people around you that do. And I do like the quotes that he says about it. And one of the ones that stood up to me the most was, you're a recruitment company. That's your priority. And the founders that realize this will build world-changing companies. So again, building on bringing in the right people, and letting your ego not take part of that. The other ones the ones that stood out to me, I thought was so simple. And I think that all of us kind of have kind of talked about this at some point in time about how easy of a read it is. It almost seems like childlike, right? When you start to think about how easy it is to break some of these things down, like the 3 bars for building great teams. So I really thought this was actually pretty easy, if you will, right? So you're just basically using a bar raiser, bar maintainer, and a bar lowerer. So fire, hire, train. Super, super easy way to look at something that's a really hard process. I kind of go back to the same example. My first employee, I guess you can say, let go. I was like white in the face. I couldn't function. I was shaking. I was so nervous about letting somebody go because I felt bad about it. And then somebody said to me a long time ago, you're not firing people, they fire themselves, right? So it essentially is what it comes down to. And when you start to really break it down, that's really what was happening here. I went from a role where these were my peers and now they're reporting to me. So I had to now let some of them go. It was a really hard transition. But essentially they were doing things that got them fired. So when you start to look at this, we had meetings that were very easy like this, fire, hire, train, but we never put it into those kind of easy terms. So I think that this, looking back, would have solved a lot of problems. A lot of questions would have been answered if we would have used this kind of simplistic model. But I thought that was a really good way to look at it, and can be used today for pretty much anything that you're looking to get an answer on. And then, Ron, I know you touched about this, was the progressive, celebrate progressiveness, and this can really relate to anything, right? So just life in general. You can talk about therapy, things like that, but also the small things with your team. So you have to celebrate the small stuff too, because it can get lost. And if the big picture can seem too far away and unachievable, then you lose interest with the team and less motivation across them as well. So this, I think, it can definitely be something that we see, especially within our LifeWave group, because it's hard not to get focused on the big picture and instead celebrate the small successes along the way. And that you are doing something great, even though you don't see these big teams under you yet, or you don't see the numbers you want to see yet. But you are building something great, and it just starts with one thing at a time. And you got to make sure that you're celebrating those things, because if you don't, that's when you lose sight of the big picture. So those were some of the things that stood out to me. I probably will also go back and read this because the last thing that he said, Chris, I love what you said at the end about how you put the QR code in there. I almost bought it, right? So I guess I kind of fit that exact profile of what he's looking to do. And I just like what he says, like, it's not a one size fits all. And getting to know your team is the most important piece of it. So if you don't know your people, you don't know your company, and I don't think you then know the business. So it becomes a bigger problem at the end. So just some thoughts on mine.
I'll jump in. What's up, guys? So I agree with a lot of the common themes that are kind of easy. I'll grab easy. Let me say that repeatable, that we've seen before. It's just packaged really, really well. I will say, someone said something relatable. It's very relatable. Well, except for, I just kind of skimming back through certain sections, saw where by the time I was 27, my companies were generating multiple tens of millions of dollars or something. I was like, okay, maybe not exactly related there. I haven't probably hit that mark. But anyway, so that said, he's wise beyond his years, and just incredible amount of experience. So I'll give a couple of phrases that I'm kind of jumping around, that kind of stuck, and then just something that's kind of unique to think about. So comfortable. Okay, well, we talked about this before, but the objective isn't to try to get rid of your pressure. It's to change your relationship with it altogether. And I was trying to explain to my wife, I was doing a terrible job. Like, no. Stress can be good, but pressure can be good, but then there's good stress and bad stress. But if you think of it as good, so I'm going to have to reread and figure out how to more succinctly explain the concept. But if you're just comparing the stress of you're working minimum wage, you can barely feed your family, you're not sleeping, like that type of stress, versus you're trying to build something great and you have a lot of pressure and there's a lot of opportunity, but you're starting a new company or even a new relationship, whatever it is, but there's opportunity for it to be great. Whatever that situation is, that's a different type of pressure, and you should view it that way and not let it impact you. So thought that was good. And then the comfortable and easy are short-term friends, but long-term enemies. If you're looking for growth, choose the challenge. And then kind of following that, you can predict someone's success in any area of their life by observing how willing and capable they are at dealing with uncomfortable conversations. Your personal progression is trapped behind an uncomfortable conversation. That applies. I generally like to get along with most people, but I can think back in, situations daily and where, could just get to the point, but this kind of softens it, and maybe it's going to get a little better, or whatever that may be, employee, or you can pick the scenario. The philosophy, I thought, he threaded a needle a little bit, is that you must be a plan A thinker. This law demonstrates, basically, you got to be all in, right? And then he talks about the post by pre-mortem. We may have talked about this last week, but so you're all in and you have a very, positive mindset, just the way that he mentions, like, oh, but you also got to think about everything that can go wrong, like, essentially. And so it's a fine line to walk because you're all in, you can do this, but then also, why would this fail? Which could be viewed negatively, and that's something kind of I wrestle with. I've got another basically startup business that could do this, we could do that. We could, well, maybe this, that. Well, what if that doesn't work? Oh, should we try it though? And then that's failure, and that's good feedback. Or that could fail, so we don't do this. So there's still some there's a lot of nuance in some of these guidelines. And to what Crystal was saying about hiring, yeah, in the last 6 months since we opened, I'm in the process. In not by my intention of will be replacing my second key employee. They both for different reasons are moving, and I hate recruiting. Like I don't mind like the passive, have a bench, cool, but for need, I hate it. So it's like, and I'm in that process, like 18, the whole fire fast, hire slow, but too slow. It's really going to impact my lifestyle over the holidays, but am I going to be completely in this thing and not, so it's good to be reminded and read through and have a just third party perspective kind of echoing back to you, whether you're reading or listening, that is reminding what we all know inside. You're not going to rush and make a wrong decision for or a wrong decision for the wrong reasons, but hopefully give it time and make the right decision from a hiring and culture fit, and long term perspective for the right reasons. So very good book. Touches an incredible amount of here's relationship, here's obviously business, here's mindset. Like there's books like Chris mentioned that are just like a paragraph of what he talks about in here, and the entire subject is dedicated to it. So I think he covers a lot in a very a good format. And kind of in summary, there's just some unique perspectives that if you were just looking at the surface might kind of seem counter to each other, which, to your guys' point, makes you read it again and kind of find the nuance. So I enjoyed it.
I'll jump in really quick. First, I just wanted to say about, I think Ron had said something earlier about the momentum and the progress or whatever. If I remembered the word impetus, and every time I say that, I think of Greg. But every time, yeah. So whenever the momentum of doing the smaller things and feeling like, hey, I'm moving forward, that's the momentum, right? But then the feeling you get from like, I'm actually going somewhere with this is what creates the impetus to continue to do those smaller things that make you move forward every day. So that was just like a little thing you made me think of, Ron, when you were talking about that. Like you guys, I love the book, but my favorite line in the whole thing was, when you're in the business of motivating people, emotional management is everything. And I think that was somewhere locked in the last chapter where he was talking about the cycling team, or some team where he was like yelling at someone in the locker room, and he was like, I was the best player out there, why are you yelling at me, right? And he literally went to him the next day. He's like, listen, you were the best player out there, but if I have to get to them, I have to give it to someone who I know can take it. And I love the way that it broke that down. Like when you're a leader or when you want to manage and motivate a team, you can't be just the puzzle piece and like smack you in the middle of everyone and fit everyone's corners. You have to know how to reach each person individually. And there was actually a page, or like a 2-pager, of quotes from different members of the team, and they were all saying the same thing. He treated me different than the rest of the team. He talked to me different. He gave me advice. He made everyone feel special in their own way because he knew how to talk to every single person. And there was even one of them that said, oh, he treated me so different, or he gave me so much good advice that it made me want to go hard for him. Like it made me want to step up and like be someone in my team or whatever. There was even an example of he only met my grandpa once or twice, but he knew what kind of flowers or drink that he liked, and he showed up to my house. Yeah, drink. He showed up to my house when my grandpa was sick or something, and he just knew, and that he knew how much that meant to me, and that's what makes people want to step up. So to me, that last sentence, when you're in the business of motivating people, emotional management is everything, and not just theirs, right? Like managing the way they think, the way they react or whatever, but your own. Because I literally saw a clip of a podcast over the weekend of a guy the guy's the main person of the podcast, not this guy, but some other guy, and he wants to convince people on the podcast about certain things or about certain beliefs, and he had someone on the podcast to like debate, right? The girl goes and asks him a question. I'm not gonna get into it because it's a very, left and right, but she asks him a question, and before she could even finish her question, he starts name calling her, cursing her out, this and that, like just calling her out of her name, all kind of crazy things. And in my mind, I'm like, she won. Like you're on your podcast supposedly, trying to lure her or make her understand your side. And the moment she asks you a factual question, you literally tear her down and call her out of her name and everything. Not only is she never going to see your point of view because of the way you reacted, but maybe some of your listeners, the people you were already swaying, are like, whoa, why are you reacting like that? She was just asking a question. So when I read that, it literally triggered that clip in my mind. I'm like, emotional management, not just theirs, right? He could have asked her or responded in a way that catered to her thoughts or whatever, but to manage our own in the face of those kind of things. So love this book. I actually went to the back and he even suggested, or I think he was his first book, um, Happy Sexy Millionaire. It was the name of his first book. So, maybe we throw that one in the mix at some point, but loved it, loved it.
I'll go next. I It's interesting because everyone touched on exactly the area that I loved too. So I'm going to go back to the 3 bars first. And just to back up, whenever I'm reading a book, I am thinking about me. You know what I mean? I'm like, how is this going to relate to me? And the reason is because if I'm the person that's building something, I'm the attractor. Who am I? So everything I'm reading, I'm like, how can I, apply this to myself? And in that chapter, the 3 bars, I love that question where, where he's talking about the question is, if everyone in the organization had the same cultural values, attitude, and level of talent as this person, would the bar, the average, be raised, maintained, or lowered? So I put that to myself. I'm like, where am I? Where would people put me? Because I want to be that person that people go, oh, Michelle, boom, for sure, bars raised, because I want to attract those same people. I don't want to be that person who's like, yeah, well, she's going to maintain, so it's like, what can I be? How can I be that person that people name and say, Michelle is that person, And I think about that quote, which not quite getting it right, but you are the sum total of the 5 people who surrounds you, and so I think about that. So as I'm reading, I'm thinking, how am I putting this to myself? So, um, and I think it's one of those things because when I'm learning, then I'm teaching, and when I'm teaching, they're learning, and then they're going to keep sharing. You know what I mean? So I'm always like, how is this relating to me? Not selfishly, but kinda, because I'm wanting to also self-improve so that I can support people to be that person. I've had leaders in my life where I'm just like, man, I wish there's somebody else who can charge, and it's just like, but okay, I'm going to do my best here. So with that in mind, I'm always reading like flipping it, looking at in the mirror, it's like, how does that pertain? And what's calling me out or what's encouraging me? And the next chapter, Law 31, as everyone's talking about that marginal gains, I was camped there because in my wellness business, I'm always talking to people. Like for me, my whole foundation is to support people in sustainable well-being, period. And change isn't change unless it's sustainable. So that sustainability part is super important to me. And when I'm talking to people, I'm always talking to them about, stop trying to eat the whole pie. It's just that one piece, it's that one bite, and baby steps is still forward momentum. So it's great to see. And I've read about this guy also in Atomic Habits, and the same thing about this cycling team and that 1%. And I love that because, again, flipping it about me, I looked earlier at my rank and I was so bummed because I dropped out of rank again. I'm like, dang it. And so I was just feeling like, what's going on? And I was just getting in this swirl. And then reading this reminded me, it's like, oh yeah, whatever. What is my 1% that I'm going to do every day to continue to just be showing up, to continue to be making that difference, to be making that change, to be, so that helped me because then I thought, oh, I can do that for the person or people who are under me. It's the one thing that you're doing today. And so I just scaled it down like, I need to be calling 17 people and they need to be getting back on the auto ship and they need to do, blah, blah, blah. It's just like, all I really need is 1% and just make sure I'm supporting and encouraging and sharing from a place of love and heart that they know that they are cared for. And so, you know, because that's the feedback I get consistently when people say, "Oh, you know what? I didn't feel like you're trying to sell me when you talked to me about the patch. I felt like you were caring about me." And it's like, let me just go back to 1%. What's my 1% that I can do every day? And so that really personally supported me, to like, what is my 1%? And how am I going to apply this rather than looking at the big picture, like, I want to be SPD by this date? It's like, okay, I'm going to do my 1%. And that momentum, it's sort of like I was preaching to the choir because it's like I tell people that all the time, but then reading it, I was like, "Oh yeah, oh, thank you for telling me and saying a lot of things that I'm saying to other people." And it reminded me of this quote. I used to have this on my website by Ariana Huffington about her definition of micro steps, and her definition of micro steps is they're too small to fail. And so, I always tell people like, you can instead of trying to go to the gym every day, do one push up and one sit up. You can do that while the microwave's going. I mean, boom, boom, and you're done. Click, you know. And so just again, being reminded of that 1%, that accessible, easy thing, and I loved what he talked about, the feelings part, and um I thought this one part where he says, it's quite rare that you can make a major change and make it sustainable, but it's quite easy to make small incremental changes and make them stick. And it's the stickability, I love that word, over time, I think, which makes the big difference. Again, back to that sustainability, So I was like, oh, so I took a ton of notes and highlighted pretty much the whole page. And but I felt like mostly because again, I could relate to it. And so when things hit me in a personal way and I can relate to it very specifically, I can easily encourage somebody else because I know how it feels. I know how it feels to have that discouragement. I know how it feels to like look at this big picture and go, man, I'm not even close to being there. Or I can maybe like go, oh, what is my 1% that I did? Oh, I did that today. Right on, cool. You know? And so I'm all of a sudden feeling like I'm able to do this. And so for me, I feel like it infused me to help other people in a way that encouraged me when I was feeling discouraged, about not having a certain thing. Um, Lastly, I loved the part where, and Lola were talking about this, that inconsistent leader, and the summary for me with that was that it's just like meeting people where they are, because I've had people again, same manager, not naming names, where he treated everybody the same, and I was just like, "Pff, this person didn't even see me at all, or I've gone to interviews and they ask the same question to everybody, and it's super, super clear that they're asking everybody the same question. And I remember being in a situation where they asked me that question, and it was so clearly inappropriate. And briefly, I'll just tell you what it was. I was applying for the job where I was the only Black employee and I was looking to actually get promoted. And so the person said, "What's a situation where you've been the only one in the situation?" I just looked at her like, "Really?" You know? And so, it just kind of offered some feedback. I'm just like, apart from, and I named it. And she's like, "Oh, yeah, we should really start redoing things." And I was like, maybe actually start asking people about who they are as people, rather than just like the rote script. So I loved, this example. As Lila said, all the different team players who felt so seen, so valued, so personalized, like he knows me, you know, and they all had the different stories of how he did that. I think that speaks volumes, and again, flipping it back to myself. Am I that person? Am I treating people individually, so that they actually are feeling seen, valued, and heard, in a very specific way? Even if it's that little one thing, that little 1% that I'm trying to remember about that person so that the next time I see them, because for me, it's names, I was on a call the other day and I called the person the wrong name. I was like, dang it, you know, so just whatever the 1% is, so I feel like for me, I'm always like, me first, so that way I can share it in a very authentic way, So um echoing what everybody said, this book, I've just been eating it up really and highlighting and doing a bunch of things. So that's my share.
All right, I'll go. Just like everyone here, I really enjoyed the book, and it's one of those books that you want to always keep close by, maybe by your desk or at night, and when you're going through something or you're doubting something, I'm pretty sure we could look through the contents and say, okay, I need to reread this law today. But it's true, and I agree with everyone. He is a very relatable person, and even in his podcast, because I've been listening to his podcast for a while, he can have the smartest person interviewing the smarter person, like from athletes to doctors to big personality. And the way he asks the questions and the way he interviews is always with that person in mind, like the person listening, the person reading his book, and making it relatable so it can make sense and we could apply the actions, like the actions that we need to take to do the same thing or to find and do what he's like implementing the things that he's doing. So he treated the book the same way. It's like every law, he finds a way to make it relatable and to apply it into your own life. So, and it could be any area. Like I thought it was a business book when I first saw it, but it's a lot more than that. It's a lot of mindset. It's a lot of personal relation, like in your relationship and the way your everyday. So that was also something I appreciated about the book. And the last chapter, I also love Law 31, which is small wins. I agree with what everyone said. Like Justin said, like you focus on the big picture, that you forget the whole journey, like you forget where you're going. And similar to I'm going to put an example, like the year is ending, the new year is coming. A lot of people always be like, okay, this is going to be the year. And then you start either Googling, listening, reading, or learning all the things that you have to implement into your life to be completely different from the year before. And you have a whole list, and I speak from experience, you have a whole list of the changes you have to implement, the new habits you have to apply into your life to get the results that you want by the end of the year or by a certain time. And you try to do it all at once. By February comes, everything is out the window, gone. Mid-year comes, you're like, oh, whatever, I'll start next year. So it's like the small thing, like that 1% Michelle was saying, like the really, really small win. Because and when I've tried that, like, okay, it could be as simple as, going to bed early or not using my phone before bed or just drinking water before drinking coffee in the morning, like something simple like that. And you go like, wow, if I did it one day, I could do this again. And then you feel so good, like Lola was saying, you feel so good of getting there, and you're like, oh, okay, this is easy. I could do what's coming next, and you want to keep doing these things. So those little steps and small habits are key, small wins. And the last one, 33. So I saw it as like, because I follow him, like I've listened to the podcast, I have I'm on his email where you get that weekly email, I think it's weekly, from CEO, quotes from CEOs. And I see it as like, okay, like you can never stop learning. The moment you say, I know everything, you're like shutting yourself down for growth. I believe in that as well. But something that I'm working on, because always keep me stuck, is just like the learning, the learning, the learning. Kind of makes me feel like I'm never ready, never ready, never ready. So the way he talks about, yes, you keep learning. There's like growth in learning every single day and not letting yourself think you know everything. It's also learning but taking action. And he makes it really, really easy and relatable that you could implement things to take the action, because knowledge without action, we're staying in the same place anyway. So yeah, great book. I really enjoyed this one.
All right, thank you guys so much. I just put it in the chat there, a reminder that we're not going to be meeting next week. We'll meet the first discussion for the culture code right here on the December 3rd. I also updated it in the Facebook group. So enjoy your holidays, and we'll see you guys on December 3rd.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving.